Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be taking a look back at Miller World with Big Game Issue 3 by Mark Millar and Pepe Larraz. The assassination of the world's heroes is in full swing and Mark continues to pour on the speed as more of his creations bite the bullet this issue. Since we lost our POV characters last issue with Bobby and the Chrononauts all being killed off, Millar shifts focus over to Hit-Girl, but not before spending 90% of the issue exploring more parts of the world and seeing more heroes die and catching up with old heroes, specifically Dave Lazowski suiting back up as Kick-Ass, or at least trying to convince himself to do so. I like that he's just so desperate to do this and he just wants to go out and be a hero. He's seen in the wake of him retiring all these heroes like the Ambassadors and Hit-Girl doing her thing and the Magic Order and Nightclub all just spring up, and he feels partially responsible for that. And I like there's this sort of vanity to it where he wants to desperately be part of that and be seen as the progenitor of that, so that's why he's getting back into the swing of things. That itself is kind of like an age-old comic trope, you know, the old gruff hero coming back for one last mission sort of thing. And I like that there's also a bit of extra meta thing going on where Dave, obviously being a comic book nerd, is aware of that trope. So he's sort of feeding into it because it's like he's living his dreams as a superhero, and that's something a superhero often does, especially when they reach a certain age. And I like that that's sort of an extra thing for him to sort of want to do this with. Miller doesn't stop with the meta commentary there, and it honestly gets pretty bad this issue. Over the last two issues, he did it really well. There were subtle hints to real world things. We had an entire sequence where Bonnie shows the Chrononauts what is alluded to be Superman and the DC universe. But in this issue, we get Dave directly referencing both Marvel and DC, Pokemon, and probably the worst one, Joe Biden. Now, I have no problem with all of these things being mentioned. It kind of does a little bit of world building and everything, but it's how they're being used. And it's almost like a checklist of things that Miller has, and he's just kind of running down them all and kind of checking them off as he goes on. Oh, Dave said Crisis of Infinite Earths or the big new summer Marvel event. Oh, we can tick that off. People will like that. It'll get the member berries going. Has that sort of feel to it, and it just takes me out of it all. On the other side of that coin though, this is all Dave Lazowski saying it. No other characters actually say this sort of stuff. And of course, as I said before, Dave is a comic book nerd, so he's now aware of that sort of trope. So it's got that meta thing going for it, which is kind of really cool as well. But again, it's just something that pulls me straight out of it, and I didn't particularly like it at all. Once we're out of the Kick-Ass stuff and we see him going off to one of the many different traps that Wesley, Gibson and the Fraternity have set, the comic shifts focus back over to Hit-Girl and Eggsy, who have infiltrated the Fraternity's main headquarters and immediately get thrown into a big action sequence where Eggsy is killed. Of all the deaths, this one kind of really shocked me, since I would have thought he would have kept Eggsy alive a little bit longer, especially since people know who that character is thanks to the Kingsman movies, and the Kingsman movies were quite popular. So you would have thought he would have kept him alive a little bit longer along with Hit-Girl, and obviously Hit-Girl is going to be the main character since she is his most popular character and everyone knows who Hit-Girl is, and she's very successful in her own solo series as well as in Kick-Ass and all of the spin-offs in that. But Eggsy's death really did surprise me, honestly. It was quite a surprise, and a really brutal one as well. He just gets his head blown in by a random goon, which is really crazy. And of course this leaves Mindy to fight Wesley alone. I love the idea that Wesley views Hit-Girl as the one person in the world he thinks will prove to be a proper challenge to him and his plans. Although with that being said, it was a little short-sighted of him to just send a random group of soldiers to take her out, since you would think that he would want to do it himself to confirm that she is indeed dead and to sort of bask in that glory almost, since he does a little bit here where he confronts her and wants it known to her that she has no way of living anymore and she will die, and it's better off if she just accepts that. I did like that sort of rapport they have between each other. Anyways, Mindy manages to kill a bunch of Wesley's goons, and thanks to getting hold of a Chrononaut time device, she travels back 65 million years into the past. This is a really fun twist and also brings it back to the first issue of the series, which saw Edison Crane digging up million-year-old effigies to heroes and the such. So my guess is Mindy is going to use her time going back in time to prepare for Wesley in some way or set up some sort of trap for him. Of course, the biggest thing is is that this gives her a chance to revert things to the way they were. She can now prepare, obviously, and those dead heroes we've been seeing in the last 3 issues will all now be back to life at some point, probably by the end of this series. I would not be surprised. That in itself kind of deflates the impact of their deaths, but again, those deaths were really kind of shock values to raise the stakes early on in the series. It's also a little funny how in the span of just a couple of weeks, both Mark Millar and Jonathan Hickman have roughly the same idea, with time-traveling heroes going back in time to prepare for a coming threat they know will come at a certain time. It doesn't happen all the time in the comic industry, but it's always funny when comic companies or writers have similar stories that also end up coming out at around the same time, and it's kind of fun to compare notes against each other and just see how similar Millar's stuff here is to the Ultimate Invasion stuff that Hickman is building up over at Marvel. Big Game issue 3 was another action-packed death-filled issue that took more heroes off the board and shifted focus onto Hit-Girl as the main character. While I am indeed enjoying the story and where it is going, a couple of meta references and Millar's need to be edgy with said meta commentary kind of pulled me out of it a little, especially after he has done so well with it in the previous 2 issues. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10.